Malaysian 370, contact Ho Chi Minh 120.9. Good night.
Good night, Malaysian 370.
Breaking news tonight, a Malaysia Airlines flight with 239 people on board, including 4 Americans, has gone missing.
From the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds."
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the stream tonight. I'm your host, Ashton Forbes. It is Secret Science Wednesday. Sorry for the delay. I know a lot of you guys are waiting. I just got hung up hanging out with my parents, so it took me a minute to get back. So I was thinking about it, and we're going to talk about conscious plasma today. So we're going to dig a little bit into the woo, more into the woo than I usually dig into. But to balance it out, we're going to look at some more 0-point energy stuff, because I think that looking at 0-point energy and explaining 0-point energy, you can't do it more too often. A lot of it's about repetition when it comes to education and teaching people. Hey, Ocean is she likes my plaid shirt that I'm wearing today. So for people who are watching on stream, yeah, I haven't had to wear this shirt in a while because this is like a wool shirt. So decided to break it out here tonight. Okay, guys. Thank you guys for being here early on as well. Appreciate you. Somebody just mentioned something that I haven't brought up very much, which I think we're going to take a look at real quick because I just think it's crazy. The Columbia shuttle disaster. A lot of people talk about the Challenger shuttle disaster. There's all these conspiracies. There's this one conspiracy theory that says that like all the people are still alive on the Challenger that was 1986, I think. But a lot of people don't remember the Columbia. The Columbia, that shuttle burnt up on re-entry, according to the narrative, in the early 2000s, I think it was. And there's a very weird video out there that doesn't get any attention that appears to be the Columbia destroyed in outer space. I think I'm going to show it. I've avoided, like, I posted this video way back in August of 2023. And I deleted it because I didn't want people to like use it to try to discredit me in case it was fake. But like this thing is sketchy. This is sketchy. And the reason why it's sketchy for my people who are into conspiracies here or whatever, I'm going to show it here in just a second. And we're going to do a little bit of, something off topic to begin the episode here for us tonight, guys. So this space shuttle, the explanation that's out there is that this shuttle was like hit by something when it was taking off. Something penetrated it. And it was in outer space for like 1 to 2 weeks. And you'd be like, well, something penetrated it, like shouldn't it have like destroyed on launch or like while it was in space? No. Like when it actually came back, they're saying that it like burnt up on re-entry, but there's no actual video or anything of it like actually, of the people like trying to come back. There is one video out there that shows like stuff burning up in the atmosphere, but that's about it. So this video, the other reason why I think this video is suspicious, I'm going to show you guys in just 1 second, is that the faking hoaxer claimed to have made this video, but the faking hoaxer isn't even a real person. They don't have any real name attached to them. Like they don't have any work that they've claimed that like, actually that's not true. They did have some videos out there that like their shtick was like making videos that like blend reality with fiction or something like that. And they basically put their water stamp on the end of the video, and that's the proof that they made the video. So you're kind of like, okay. And the reason why this is weird is like, this is what I've learned digging, like, just watching what's been happening with these videos is like the way the intel communities hide real stuff is actually very rudimentary and it's elementary. Like, it's not high level shit. It's like they just put something on the internet and be like, oh, this must have come from that. And they allow people to make these conclusions that are like not logical or with any merit. So like just putting a watermark on a real video and claiming that like some mythical non-existent CGI person made it, that seems to be their MO. So let's take a look at this. You guys tell me what you think here. The reason why I think that there's merit to this video, other than the fact that like it looks like it was filmed around the same time that the shuttle was destroyed, is because of the way the objects move in outer space.
Okay, I don't know if you guys are still tracking it with the camera. We actually can't see it anymore, Brent.
And actually, the audio might be fake. I don't know, but like this video is pretty old. Like this video wasn't made recently. So I don't know. You guys tell me what you think here.
We actually can't see it anymore, Brent. Houston, Atlanta. Go ahead. Yeah, I'm just wondering how close we are to the trajectory formed by the Soyuz. And we're asking.
One thing to keep in mind is the audio and the music and all could be fake and the footage could still be real. They also, the cuts they add in the beginning or whatever, like just because someone claims to take credit doesn't mean they actually did it. Just a heads up. Yeah, what's filming this? I think the question would be, is there like a camera that was on part of the craft that would have been filming this? I don't know. Again, just guessing. When things zoom in, I find it really interesting. Because here's the thing, like this story, like I love things that have a real world story to go along with them. Like if this is the Columbia, then you should be able to match like the markings on this to the plane or to the shuttle. And the way the objects move looks very realistic to me. I mean, obviously anything can be fake, but just to me, it looks realistic.
We're going to check on that. But while we're waiting for that, we're thinking based on our daylight KU availability, if we can get back to the OBSS inspection and maybe light. We're thinking based on
like this part right here,
our daylight KU.
This looks really realistic to me, especially this part, this bottom left quadrant right here. This bottom left quadrant, like it's a lot of detail, and this is like pre-H high definition. So this would have been this shuttle would have destroyed in an era like we didn't have ubiquitous high definition video everywhere.
Availability, if we can get back to the OBSS inspection and maybe use the still cameras to photograph these objects. Yeah, we understand.
So I looked into a lot of the debunk stuff about this, and one of the big ones that they claimed was that you see this NASA badge over here. So you can clearly see it says United States. And then there's this NASA logo right next to it. A bunch of people were claiming, no, the NASA logo is on the wrong side. But then people found a picture, and it turns out, no, the NASA logo is actually on the correct side. This is where the Columbia NASA logo was. It's blurry here, supposedly because it's focusing.
And we're
so there you go. Now you can see, like, Anyway.
Get back to OBSS.
I mean, that looks pretty detailed to me, man. And I don't, I've already got my one thing, but for the people out there that want something to look into, like this is the kind of thing people don't pay attention to that should probably be looking into. Like, if this is real, again, you ask the question, like if this footage is real, then there should be like a weird conspiracy going on with the Columbia shuttle. And there should be some evidence out there of such a thing happening. This part with the stuff in the foreground moving at a different speed than the shuttle itself, too. Pretty wild. I mean, I kind of want to hire the fakesy and hoaxer to look into the MH370 videos and figure out if they're real or not. It's pretty good work. Okay, we wasted enough time on this chat. Thank you for watching that with me. Somebody asked about it in the chat. That's why we decided to take a look. Let's not waste any more time, though. So first thing we're going to look at here tonight, we're going to look at this video about zero-point energy. Now, the reason why we're going to look at another video on zero-point energy is that it is actually, I think the person presenting is Haish. Haish is in the guy that wrote the paper with Hal Puthoff about zero-point energy explains inertia. And Haish is 1 degree of freedom. Actually, he's directly connected to Hal Puthoff, and he's directly connected to another guy by the name of Garrett Modal. And Garrett Modal, as we watched a video or 2 videos about, has been researching Casimir cavities and how to extract unlimited energy from the zero-point fluctuations using Casimir cavities. So this is the stuff where, like, we're finding the guys that these are the people we highly suspect they know some stuff. You know, they're like Haish, Puthoff, Modal. These guys are not looking into this stuff just like they're not spending their lives looking into it because it doesn't have any merit. Like, these guys are like convinced zero-point energy is the answer. So and I think this video is from quite a while ago. I actually don't know when it's from, so maybe we can figure that out as well. Just says indirect extraction of zero-point energy from the quantum vacuum with a patent number on here. Actually, I think this patent's from the early 2000s. If you guys look that patent number up, I think I remember it being from the early 2000s. Bernard Haish and Garrett Modal. So Bernard Haish wrote the paper with Hal Puthoff. Oh, there it is, 2010. Society for Scientific Exploration, 2010. So this is a 14-year-old video. So according to debunkers, that means it's automatically fake. Let's listen. Oh, and the reason why this is about conscious plasma, but we're doing this first, is that in order for me to get to the idea that conscious plasma is possible, which is something that if you had asked me a year ago, I would have thought was legitimately like woo-woo crazy, is that you need free energy to be a thing. Like, you have this ocean of energy. What if life itself, I'm going to switch to full screen. What if life itself is just a permanent connection to that energy? Permanent connection. And not the difference between the energy we use that wouldn't be conscious because we're constantly destroying our dipole. But what if we have a situation where we create like a link, this quantum level link between that energy that's out there to the macroscopic world, and that produces consciousness or allows consciousness to exist? Like, life is energy, just like Joe says. What if that's true? Then could a plasma that's just coherent, self-sustaining, extracting energy out of it, could there be some form of consciousness there? And we shouldn't think about this in terms of like talking to other humans, because like we see there's other life on this planet. We can see that there is like animals versus humans, completely different level. Same as plants versus animals. Plants are technically alive, but are they really conscious? And what does consciousness actually mean? So to start with that, what we first must understand is how 0 point energy can be extracted. Like, are our bodies constantly extracting 0 point energy all the time? And is that how we're alive? And then if we figure out that that may be possible, then it does make more sense. And you can build onto this idea of, well, then can just coherent plasma be conscious? And the reason why I've started to give this more merit is Salvatore Paez already mentioned this on my first interview with him when I thought it was the craziest idea ever. He mentioned Joseph P. Farrell. Joseph P. Farrell wrote a book about this basically, and he also predicted basically exactly what happened to MH370, that somebody used a super weapon to teleport the plane. It just blows my mind this guy came up with that. Like, that's out of left field. Nobody was saying that. And this was like days after the plane disappeared. So maybe these guys are actually onto something. I don't want to rule it out entirely. So let's start with this video. Yeah, and this is by far the furthest into the woo I've gone on any of my stuff. Just, I want you guys to keep in mind and remember that, like, I'm traditionally actually more of on the skeptic side than anything else. But once you realize that, like, the United States government intelligence agencies are capable of like major conspiracies, you kind of want to know, what does that look like? And then once you realize what it looks like, you realize, oh, it's actually a lot simpler than what I thought. It's like, if all I have to do is like put some VFX onto the internet that already exists, and people will just do all my work for me and be like, oh, that's a perfect match, even though it's not. Or all I have to do is just take satellite imagery and just plant it on the internet and then tag the fake and hoaxer on top of it. And then like people will just believe it, or, you know, something like that. That like is actually reasonable level of disinformation that somebody could pull off. So now I want to know, what are they capable of and what is really real that's out there? And for me, the easiest way to figure that out is looking at the science, digging into the people that have been researching 0 point energy for decades. So this is Bernard Haish. I think it's him presenting because it doesn't look like Garrett Model. We know what he looks like. And the difference between this is a great question. Crypto Alchemist says Cliff High is overrated. I don't really know anything about Cliff High except for like he followed me in the beginning, and then he was getting like trying to use me as a platform to talk about the Palladians and whatever. Like, I don't know, man. Maybe that stuff's real. Maybe it's not. For me, I'll be honest with you, the way that a lot of this feels like, I also get asked about like Cab Targaryen or whatever the dude's name is. I don't know. Said something about the Palladians saved MH370 with their ship. And then also stuff, people like Patrick Jackson that say like, oh, the orbs are an AI defense network or whatever. Like, I have the same view on that I do where like, well, okay, my view is that it feels like they're just LARPing, that they're just making up some story because they've got this lore in their minds about aliens or AI or whatever, and they're just trying to fit this information to fit that lore. That's my view of it. For me, I think I have to do my own, like, okay, I need to start from the ground level. What's the science? What does the science say? And then figure out from there, like, okay, what is non-human intelligence? What does it even mean? And so that's why for people that are out there, I want you to come to your own conclusions as well. I don't want you to just believe what I'm doing. I'm not trying to create a religion or a cult or anything like that. So here we go. Enough of me talking. Let's get to this thing.
If you get online and look for 0 point energy devices or gadgets or things like that, you're going to find lots and lots of claims, dozens if not hundreds of claims of devices and conspiracies and things that are on the shelf but hidden from us and so on. I don't believe any of that. What I'm presenting to you this morning is, I think, the real McCoy, the real thing. The problem is it's the real thing, but we can't guarantee it's going to work. I mean, this is something that we think may be revolutionary. On the other hand, we have yet to prove it experimentally. So I'll talk to you this morning about the physics behind it.
This might be the one time where the sound was actually louder in the YouTube video, like the one time. I turned the volume down a little bit. Sorry, guys. That was probably loud. My bad.
This concerns a quantum vacuum energy patent that Garrett Modell and I were issued a couple of years ago.
So this is definitely Bernard Haish. I also want to point out, he says, I'm not a conspiracy guy. A lot of these people, the problem is conspiracy theory, the word has been used as just a pejorative to like discredit people and what have you. Oh, you're a conspiracy theorist, blah, blah, blah. Like, respect to Garrett Modal or to Haitian Modal, but like, there is a conspiracy to hide 0-point energy. Like that's clearly happening. Like several people have figured it out, and then they all like die at young ages or get their stuff stolen or whatever. Like it's pretty unavoidable. If 0-point energy is real, like there's definitely covering it up. But at the same time, the reason why I point this out is that like these guys are just normal guys, and they just come to this conclusion that like, yes, there must be this sea of energy, and yes, we must be able to tap into it. And then they become conspiracy theorists because you're like, why is this not known?
Now assigned to the University of Colorado, and it concerns 0-point energy. Now, 0-point energy comes directly from the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. If you let any oscillator oscillate, it will eventually come to rest because of friction. In the case of a quantum oscillator, it will never come to rest because the Heisenberg uncertainty principle forbids taking the last little bit of energy out of anything. So it was first proposed prior to the onset of quantum mechanics in 1912 and 1913 by Max Planck, Einstein, Otto Stern, who studied this in the context of the black body emission. Now, interestingly, it was sort of dropped from consideration for a number of years until quantum mechanics was developed in the 1920s, and then 0-point energy came directly out of the quantum mechanics formulations at that time, and it's been part of quantum mechanics ever since.
So if you guys are new to this, like here you go. In quantum mechanics, something can't come to rest. So imagine a swing going back and forth. We would traditionally in the macroscopic world say there's always going to be some level of friction. So at some point, the swing is going to slow down and stop. In quantum mechanics, that does not happen. Only in the macroscopic world. In the quantum world, the spin never stops. The shaking never stops. So what is that energy coming from?
You can calculate how much 0-point energy there ought to be at any place in the universe. You do this by looking at the modes of the field. I don't want to get too technical, but modes of the field means in any given direction or frequency, there is an electromagnetic mode. And if you sum all those up, you get a frequency-dependent spectrum that goes as frequency cubed. And so the spectrum of the 0-point energy goes as the frequency cubed, which means it rises very rapidly. Unfortunately, it rises to we don't know where. It could be infinity, which is a bit embarrassing because you don't want an infinite amount of energy in the universe. It could cut off at the Planck frequency, which still is enormously large. So we just don't know where this cuts off, but it goes as a frequency cubed spectrum. Now, there are effects that can be attributed to...
It's not random anymore. In fact, what if we make a little wall, a cavity where you can't fit? Some of those lines can't fit through my cavity anymore due to their wavelength, aka their frequency. They can't fit anymore. Now you create a situation where there's a pressure differential. There's less stuff on the inside here than there is on the outside. So space is naturally going to go, push it together.
So you have an underpressure. You have more waves of 0-point radiation outside of the Casimir cavity than inside that causes the plates to be pushed together. That's one way to explain the Casimir force. It's been measured. The Casimir force is now a well-established...
Wait, what happened? Did I get it froze? Weird. Okay, we're back though. I'm just going to keep going assuming we're back. Great.
Phenomenon. It's not only been measured, but it's also part of microtechnology these days because the Casimir force is a candidate to use for control of microelectronic devices. It's also responsible for an annoying problem called stiction, which causes things at a very small scale to stick together. So there's no doubt that the Casimir force exists, and that it's even a potentially useful thing or a potential nuisance depending upon how you look at it, but it's certainly something that is part of modern technology.
So we know Casimir force exists. It's not arguable. And people will say, well, it's just the van der Waals force, but it's not just the van der Waals force. Van der Waals forces happen at the atomic level in terms of things sticking together or not. When you're seeing on the macroscopic level, that's a situation where we now need something else to be able to explain it. And that's why we come up with Casimir force. Is that we're seeing the same type of force, electrostatic forces, but we're just seeing it on a level where we can like visually see these forces. So we know what's happening. We know that there's wavelengths that are being blocked out.
The force between parallel plates due to the 0-point field goes as the inverse square of the, or the inverse fourth power of the distance between them. That's also been measured very precisely now. Now, while I've been emphasizing the Casimir force, in fact, the Casimir force is not necessarily attributed to the zero-point field. It's possible to reformulate all this in terms of the interactions of particles in the two plates with each other, like a typical van der Waals force kind of formulation. And so the fact that the Casimir force exists, even though it seems to me to be a pretty good, more than a suggestion, but less than a proof, that zero-point energy exists, it's not a guarantee because there is this alternate formulation in terms of source theory. However, the quantum noise in the circuit has been measured. And in my opinion, the quantum noise in a circuit can be attributed directly to zero-point energy. And so, in my view, it has been measured directly as a real phenomenon, that zero-point energy exists.
So the quantum forces in the circuits is what he's saying. He's saying that, okay, some people are going to say that, well, you can just explain with van der Waals force using a different model. But he's saying, no, in these quantum circuits, that basically shows like probably like the issues people have when they develop quantum circuits. He's saying, no, this means that there must be the zero-point energy there.
Now, the measurement in the circuits has been at very low frequencies. And so all we know for sure is that zero-point energy exists at very low frequencies. We would need for it to exist at fairly high frequencies to be useful in the context of this invention. I'll be talking about the device that we hope will be able to tap into zero-point energy.
I do want to point out one more thing here too, is quantum gravity mentions this idea of white noise. In my opinion, that's analogous, if not exactly what zero-point fluctuations are. Like when you have your old school TV on and you see all this static, like what are we looking at there? Are we actually looking at a representation of the zero-point fluctuations that are going on all the time? That's how I would think about it. And then I would think about that. That's how all of space is. You've got this fluctuations, this white noise. What if you just clean it up? What if you make it like now have a pattern again where it's just all aligned, where now it's just lines right across the screen? What if when you do that, that's polarizing the vacuum? That's what we would want to try to do in order to get these macroscopic quantum effects. We want to take all that randomness and we want to make we want to organize it in a local region of space-time. That's how I would think about it, guys. I'm not sure that's true. That's how I think. Like that's the exact answer, but that's how I think about it.
Now, the objection is also raised sometimes that you can't actually extract energy from the zero-point field. It can't do anything useful. Well, there's actually a thought experiment that was published in 1984 already by Bob Forward that shows very clearly that, yes, you can get work out of the zero-point field. There's no doubt about it.
So here you go. This is the big one, guys. If you are out there, you're a fan of zero-point energy, you're an influencer, you must know what was just said. Robert Forward, 1984. Why? Because a lot of these other, let's call them influencer scientist people, will say, yes, there's zero-point energy. It's not arguable, but you can't do anything with it. There's not enough to do anything with it. No, Robert Forward proved that you can create basically a battery with just a very simplistic thought experiment. And you can see this image down the bottom is usually how it gets shown because you're creating this charge differential here. So instead of having two plates, he makes a spring out of it. And so what you're going to get is this compression. Because what's going to happen, it's going to compress and then it's going to extract. And you can use that mechanical energy to, do whatever you need to do with it. Basically create a dipole, an asymmetry. So absolutely. And that's just one way to do it, is that he makes a coil out of it. There you go. And we saw another one, I think it was a week or two ago, where they basically made like a trampoline out of it. And so what you saw happen would be this. And you could then use that as mechanical energy.
It's not useful in this context, but you can get work out of it. We're hoping what we proposed is useful. This is not useful, but it's a demonstration of the principle. If you take this this sort of spiral plate and you charge it up with electricity, so it simply has positive or negative charge on it, and you then rely on the Casimir force that acts between the layers of the plates, you can use the Casimir force to press this spiral together. And in doing so, you're increasing the electric field in the region. Well, you're increasing the electric field because you're causing the charges to get closer together. And so this is very useful for demonstrating the effect of the zero-point field doing work on this device. Now the problem is it can only do work during half a cycle. If you wanted to recycle this, you'd have to pull it apart again and let the zero-point energy then push things back together. That's not very useful because it's going to take more energy to pull it apart than you get out of pushing it together. But think of this as an engine that works in one half of a cycle. Not useful, but certainly demonstrates that zero-point energy is doing work. It actually does work here.
Okay, so this is great. Now, people may say, well, doesn't that damper the situation? Because he's saying, yes, you can get work, but you'd have to undo the spring. Just like if the plates come together, you have to undo the plates. It's just a matter of, for the primitives that are out there, it's a matter of building one idea onto the next for them. Like they don't think in terms of like logic and reason like the non-primitives do. So you have to really dumb it down for them. So the first thing they say is there's no way to get energy out of the 0-point vacuum. And you say, yes, there is. Here it is. Robert Ford showed it. You can make a spring. And yes, technically you'd have to undo the spring again in order to perpetually get work out of it. But you can at least one time get energy out of it. So there is energy that to be given. We have to start with that, right? First fact, you can extract energy out of the vacuum. Because then it's going to be, can you perpetually extract energy? Where a situation where somehow you can make it like reverse the force, where it's going to push the spring together and then make it come back apart again. And maybe it's not a spring anymore. But again, the point is it's an engineering problem. This is very important. We don't necessarily need two plates. We can make a spring. And this is just what we came up with in 1984, 40 years ago. So I think we can probably do better now. That was 40 years ago.
And that's the useful aspect of this. So this was the Robert Forward battery experiment proposed in the mid-1980s. Now, the basis of our experiment.
So take a good look at this. You probably can't read it, but I'll just tell you what it says. This is the ground state of hydrogen as a 0-point fluctuation state. Now, I haven't fully understood this paper, but this was one of the earliest papers written by Harold Puthoff. That's what his name is right there in the screen, Harold Puthoff. And we know he had it figured out. He's seen it in the black projects, and he started writing the papers about it. So the first one, this one's basically the core foundation, which is saying that there is this 0-point energy that's out there, and it's connected to hydrogen, the like most basic element that we have. And then he starts to write papers about basically how this explains every aspect of physics, gravity, inertia, the reason why a particle at rest is not radiating when it should be radiating energy, given the fact that it's never stopping.
Or our patent, is the prediction from theoretical physics that the ground state of hydrogen might be attributed to the 0-point energy. Now, we all know that the classical view of an atom that was developed in 1913 to try to explain the early results of atomic physics showed that there was a problem in the Rutherford view of the atom, which was having the electron orbit around the nucleus just like a planet around the sun. The problem with that, of course, is that as the electron goes around the nucleus, it radiates energy, a lot more radiation. And it would quickly spiral into the nucleus, and boom, that's the end of the atom in less than a millionth of a second. So clearly that model is wrong. But what's been discovered since then.
So there you go. He said, like, we looked at it and we thought, okay, well, this electron is radiating around the nucleus. But they decided, well, at some point it should crash into it. Well, how is it stable? How is this working? And so this is where these guys were some of the first people that were trying to figure out, okay, based on our models of quantum field theory, how does this make any sense with respect to general relativity that we're seeing on the large scales that were out there? So this is the reason why when I was researching the MH370 videos, the first question I asked when I was researching was, what about the situation related to the plane? And we find out, yes, absolutely, there's something sketchy going on here. There's some kind of cover up. The stories being presented in social media make no sense at all, like none, no evidentiary support. And then the next question is, well, is teleportation like really a thing? There would have to be some science that's out there, some thread to pull. If this science related to teleporting an airplane with some orbs, plasma orbs, is real. Turns out, yes. And it's by the exact kind of people you would expect if it's real as well. A bunch of guys who are connected to the CIA, DARPA, the ATIP program, all the UFO stuff, the advanced physics propulsion research that was done in the late 90s. These guys were connected to all of it, and they were trying to research connections between quantum field theory and general relativity. So it's like, whoa, okay, yes, all this publicly available science is out there. It all leads back to something called 0-point energy. And it turns out that this is how you connect the stuff that we see at a large scale with the small scale. And then we find out that plasma is a big component to this too. And it's relevant to what we just watched in that video where he starts talking about Robert Forward. Because again, it's an engineering problem. So we were trying to make some plates. The plates come together. Okay. People say, well, you can't get work out of that. You say, okay, I can make it into a spring. And now I can turn this into a battery. I can 100% extract work out of it. And they say, okay, well, you can't perpetually extract work out of it. It takes work to undo it. And then you go, okay, well, I'm going to look at the problem differently. I'm not going to use a spring either. In fact, I'm going to use something called plasma, the fourth state of matter, or a Bose-Einstein condensate, which is very similar, where just through potentially frequency, I can manipulate plasma in 3 dimensions without even a barrier, potentially. And it just coherently begins to form exactly what I need to create that asymmetry without having to squeeze on anything. I want you guys to think about that because that's what's going on here, is that you can really see how the science has evolved and also how that's connected to cold fusion. And it turns out cold fusion is also connected to free energy. Why? Because it's the same physics. It's the same physics every single time.
And in the 1970s and 80s was that if you let an electron spiral around the nucleus, just the way a planet would around the sun, yes, it will emit far more radiation, but if you let it pick up energy from the 0-point field, you find, interestingly, that there's a balance between those two effects exactly at the Bohr radius. So this strongly suggests that the Bohr radius is not there because Bohr said you're not allowed to decay. Rather, at that point, there's a balance between the amount of energy that a radiating electron will naturally emit as it orbits around the nucleus versus what it would pick up from the 0-point field. And so,
wow. So what he just said there was huge, is that what's happening, and this was Hal Puthoff's paper, like somebody sent me that paper that he did. And this is huge because physics couldn't figure out, if I've got this thing rotating all the time, why is it not radiating any energy? We know it's moving. Why is it not radiating energy? Because the energy that's being given off is in perfect equilibrium with the amount of energy that it's pulling out of the ether. So think of it as just like a buoy on the ocean. We've got this buoy on the ocean. Why doesn't it sink? Why is it just floating there? Because it's in perfect equilibrium. Even though it's moving, why is it just floating there? Why does it not sink? Why does it not raise? Whatever. Because in this situation, when it's in its ground state, it's in a perfect equilibrium on top of the sea of energy. That's what the argument is by Puthoff. That's what the argument is by Hayshire.
we're kind of back to a classical view of an electron as something that is sort of real, that's going around a nucleus, that is stabilized in its orbit by 0-point energy. Now, I don't want to take that too literally, because I'm not really very happy with the thought of going to a 100-year-old model of the electron going around the nucleus. But the point is that 0-point energy contribution to the stability of whatever this orbit is exactly balances the emission that you would expect if this were a classically orbiting electron.
Guys, I'm going to get to a point where it doesn't even matter if you want to interview Hal Puthoff, because I'm going to know everything that Hal Puthoff is going to say scientifically. We're basically reading. He's explaining Hal Puthoff's scientific work right there, and this is huge. He worked with Hal Puthoff. This is not like pseudoscience that Hal Puthoff was bringing up either. Like, this is legit quantum mechanics, 100%. Everything they're saying. There's no conspiracy here. There's no woo. It's just like, this is what all the scientists that we respect now said before us.
So there you have a schematic of it. The stable orbit in quantum theory is provided by simply the Bohr condition that you're not allowed to radiate, whereas in our case, the interpretation is one of a balance between two things: radiation and emission, radiation of emission and absorption of emission from the zero.
It says ZPF model Puthoff right there. Standard model, ZPF model by Puthoff.
Point field. So in quantum electrodynamics, you have a prediction of 0-point energy, but it's regarded as virtual. And electron energy states are determined by the wave function. So what you see down here at the bottom is the classical.
Sorry to keep interrupting, but I do want to address this question. Is like, The problem with making free electric energy right now is that to produce devices that do it is extremely expensive. It's not like going to Walmart and getting a fan, like this is really high tech science and high tech engineering as well. Especially when we start talking about like microchips and stuff like that, like in order to get effects that we need on the scale that we need, our material science has to be very advanced to the point where I think it is right now. It's expensive, but I think we're reaching the inflection point where we can start to actually make this stuff where it is actually economically viable for people, and will potentially over the long run be cheaper. And we don't need that to sell it, but that certainly helps when you talk about economics.
I must say classical, sort of classical quantum probability density distribution of the electron orbital as a function of distance from the nucleus. Now, as it turns out, you can go a step further than the previous Hal-Puthoff analysis that I showed, which indicates that at the Bohr radius, there's a balance between the emission and absorption radiation. You can actually go to simulations that show that if you let an electron sort of be buffeted be buffeted by the 0-point fluctuations as it orbits around the nucleus in a Coulomb field, that in fact this probability distribution, which is attributed usually simply to the wave function of the electron, can be reproduced by letting the model of the 0-point field buffeting the electron take place. And so here's a simulation run by Dan Cole at Boston University. He took a classical electron, let it orbit in a Coulomb field, let it be buffeted by the 0-point fluctuations, and looked at the position as a function of time of that electron, and lo and behold, it looks just like the probability density function that you get from quantum mechanics. And so it looks as if this model, this sort of simplistic model of an orbiting electron, does a pretty good job of giving you the same important condition that you find from quantum mechanics.
Yeah, Chad, I'm going to be unstoppable in a debate against any physicist now, like completely unstoppable. So what he's showing here is there's a different scientist who did the model and said, basically what they're trying to figure out is there a sea of energy that we're sitting on top of? We want to see if there is, then we would expect there to be this curve related to it. And right here, you're seeing it here. The curve you see there is the smooth curve is the expectation, and then the bouncy curve is actually what they measured. And so if you think of it from the large scale, they're thinking like, would this explain dark matter? Like, could this allow us to have this stickiness that we see when we look up into galaxies? But we're going to look at it on the quantum scale at a hydrogen atom at rest. Does this explain why we don't see a radiation from the electrons when they're spinning around, even though they never stop? How come we don't see them? Because they're in this equilibrium with the 0-point energy field. And so basically here they're saying we found this model, we came up with an experiment for how we could, show that this fits the model. There it is. So this experiment, I'm going to have to look this one up in a second. This is important probably to quote when people, if I get into like a debate with somebody who's like in the know, like an Eric Weinstein or something like this, I definitely want to bring this up. And you're like, well, have you read the why hydrogen at rest doesn't radiate energy? Blah, blah, blah. And then you quote these people.
Just a close-up of the same thing. The quantum probability density function for the ground state of hydrogen is a solid line, and the simulations using the buffeting of the 0-point field on the electron is the dashed line. This is also reproduced by L.J. Nickish at an institute in Monterey, who did the same thing but with his own simulation program, different from Dan Cole's. So, what is the basis for our patent? Well, in SED, electron orbits are determined by this balance of emission and absorption. And so, if you take an electron, an atom, I should say, and
okay, before you get this, I want to set the stage a little bit more for you guys. Okay, so now, these are the smarts. These are the PhD smarts out there. We've got the Godfather. Hal Puthoff was one of those two people, and Dan Cole was the second one that was just mentioned. They're going, we understand the physics of what's happening. There's a sea of energy, and they're going, how can we manipulate this? How can we extract energy from this? What's the simplest way to do it? Let's not do plates. Let's not do a spring. There must be another way to pull it off. So these guys are sitting out here, these nerds out here are going, How can we make it better? These are the people we want to be listening to. And again, this video is 14 years old. This is 14 years old. I'm not even gonna lie, this is better than going to Harvard. I would rather be watching videos of these super smart dudes who have seen UFOs and they're just trying to reverse engineer it. They're going, okay, how do we manipulate this? And we know what the answer is. The answer is going to be Casimir cavities, because that's what Garrett Modal has been looking into. So this goes back to Garrett Modal when he was probably first early doing this 14 years ago. So Garrett Modal has been trying to do this for 14 years. Goes to show this is not a simple, here you go, here's your free energy device. We've now made it the price of a, what would be small? I don't know, a cell phone. Your free energy device is now the price of your cell phone, $1,000, $1,500. That's what these guys are trying to figure out. How do you do it efficiently? How do you do it smartly?
And put it into a Casimir cavity. What you see here in the middle, is the long wavelength radiation, schematically represented by everything in green, and shorter wavelength radiation from the 0-point field represented by everything in purple. And when the atom is sitting out in free space, of course, it sees the entire 0-point radiation field. When we insert it into a cavity, that cavity then blocks out the longer wavelength aspects of the 0-point field, and so it's only reacting to the truncated 0-point field, which is represented by the purple arrows. And so since there's less 0-point energy pumping up the electron in its orbital, we would assume that the electron would spiral inward slightly, and as it does so, give off some energy, which energy then we would propose to capture. And so this is the basic idea behind the patent.
Yo, that is smart, chat. Jeez, these big brains out here, chat. So what did they do? Look at the image on the right next to me, right here. All they did was they made one plate down here and they would one plate here. They made a cavity. And this cavity, by default, squeezes out some of the lines that you see here. The big lines can't fit through anymore. So they said, what should this do if we do this? Well, now it should mess with the electrons spinning around the nucleus. Just like in a galaxy, the stars on the edge of the galaxy are moving nearly as fast as the ones in the center, which should be moving at a big difference. So like, well, let's make the stars on the edge spin inward, spin faster, slower, whatever we're going to do to manipulate it. And that's what they're saying here. So in the middle, you can see it's in the equilibrium, in the middle image in the middle here. That one's equilibrium. The electron's just constantly spinning around in perfect orientation. But if we squeeze out some of the 0-point energy, now the electron crashes into the middle. Now we're messing up the electron's orbital at the atomic level, at the quantum level.
So the idea is that if you have an atom, and let's have it moving from...
Also, chat, I'm getting fucking excited. This is smart. This is because when you look at it from this perspective, you wonder, can you manipulate it? Can you? And I think that's what he's about to show us here. Because what we're trying to do is we want to create a spring action. We want to create a spring action. It's automatically reverting itself. Well, what if we have the electron spin inward towards the middle and then we reverse it? And so now the electron starts spinning outward instead. Then we can potentially reverse the force. So if you can create a situation where you're flipping the force, now you're using the Casimir force both ways. Now you've got a perpetual motion machine.
From left to right through the system. In free space, you might have an atom that has a number of electrons, and in particular, probably we would use noble gases, argon, neon, xenon, or krypton, because they have a number of outer shell electrons that can be acted upon by this effect. In free space, you have the several electrons in the orbitals you'd expect. When the atom enters a Casimir cavity, so you have plates here, the orange lines represent plates, you would then expect some emission of radiation from the atom because the orbit has shrunk a little bit.
So radiation, just think of radiation as energy. When there's radiation, there's energy being given off. So when the electron's at rest, it's not giving off any radiation. So what are we going to do? We're just going to squeeze it a little bit. We're going to squeeze it. We're going to cause it either to go inward or outward. It doesn't matter. We don't care. We don't give a shit. We don't care if we squeeze the spring in or the spring separates. We're going to force it to do that. And then you undo it. And when you undo it, what's going to happen is going to go back to equilibrium. So you squeeze a little bit, back to equilibrium. Squeeze, back to equilibrium. How are we going to do that? We're going to do that with cavities, little cavities. So as the electron moves, we have this squeezing effect happen, and then the unsqueezing effect. Squeezing, unsqueezing. This is pretty smart.
then the atom moves out of the region between the plates into free space again. So this gray represents no Casimir plates. It's again pumped up by the 0-point field, goes back into its normal orbit, goes through another Casimir cavity, and so on. So you can have this take place many times. In fact, in one of our prototypes or prototype concepts, hundreds of times, the atom would move through in and out, in and out, in and out of Casimir cavities, and each time it does so, it would emit some radiation that we would hope to capture. So where's that energy coming from? Well, in fact, the energy is always picked up when the atom leaves the Casimir cavity. It's being picked up from the universe at large. We're drawing energy out of the 0-point field of the universe. It's sort of like taking a thimble and taking water out of the ocean. Yeah,
I've got a better analogy. Wow, this is crazy, guys. If you guys are not listening right now, pay attention. So just like if you were to push something into the water, let's say it was like a balloon into the water, what's going to happen? The balloon's going to go back to the surface again. So what they're doing is like taking this balloon, it's going down in the water, and it's coming back up to the surface. But in this case, we're getting free energy out of it. We're not even paying to push it down. It's automatically getting pushed down just because we create these cavities. So the balloon goes down, we capture the energy, and then the balloon goes straight back to the surface automatically and repeats the process. That's what you're looking at there with the graph. So the difference between the lines going outward versus the lines in the equilibrium. We're just basically, we're not paying for it at all. The energy field is always, the ocean is always trying to go back to level automatically. And the energy field is always trying to do that as well.
We're getting energy at the expense of something, but it's something enormous, something vast. It's something that permeates the entire universe everywhere. And so the view is that we are able to tap into this universal sea of 0-point energy using this device. And down at the bottom, we simply have a schematic representation of a heat exchanger. We don't know exactly where the radiation is going to come out and how to capture it. That's part of the problem we face now in trying to show experimentally that this is going to work.
Okay, shit, chat. Like, you might have just learned the secrets to free energy here, guys. Now the question is, okay, how do we capture it? We've got this very sub-microscopic quantum level understanding where we create these cavities that pushes out some of the waves. Now this makes so we have this pressure that's happening on the quantum scale, like piezoelectricity, like squeezing something and now electricity pops out. Now how do we extract it?
Capturing emitted energy. It's oftentimes argued that we are making a mistake by assuming that there's any energy to be captured, because as the atom is pushed into the cavity and again is pushed out of the cavity, somehow we're tapping into that energy that we're hoping to capture to move the atom. And I don't think that's the case, because to take, for example, an ordinary hydrogen atom, and we have it in the ground state. So we have an atom of hydrogen in the ground state. There's the electron. We illuminate it with ultraviolet light. And by illuminating it with ultraviolet light, we cause an excitation to the first level. So this is the Lyman alpha transition at 1216 angstroms. And so we have an excited atom. And if we then have that atom enter into a region where there's an opaque shield, not a Casimir cavity, just something to block out the ultraviolet light, then clearly the electron will drop down into its ground state orbit again, emitting Lyman alpha radiation. And then it'll move out again, and if we want to, we could repeat the process. Now, it does us no good because we're supplying the energy to do this. But the point is that just because the atom is emitting energy in this region here where the excitation radiation is being blocked, that's got nothing to do with any pressure gradient needed to push the atom out. And so this is.
So he's now just giving another thought experiment, because there's some physicists out there that still will refuse to believe. So he's basically just showing it here. So when you see these bars, this is the part where it's going through the Casimir cavity. He's basically saying here, we don't need to pay to push the things apart. If we just have the system pre-built where there's cavities already in it, then we're going to see these quantum effects where there's electron squeezing happening here on this quantum level. And the moment the electrons move past it into the open area, they're going to go back to normal again. Over here, you see in the top right. So it's going from normal to squeeze to normal again. This is motion. This is work. This can be used as energy. It's just a matter of figuring out how to transduce it from one form into another.
This is an analog, a very simple analog.
Also to scale it up.
What we're proposing to do with 0-point radiation. So I see no reason why there should be, and the analog is shown down here. In the case of 0-point radiation, instead of ultraviolet light, you have the 0-point field. You have Casimir plates that block out the 0-point field in the same way that these opaque shields block out the ultraviolet light. there's emission of light or whatever radiation, form of radiation. We don't know at what part of the spectrum it will come out. And then upon reemergence, again, we expose it to the zero-point field and it's re-energized. Could this be tested apart from, well, there are two ways, of course, to test this idea. One is to actually have energy generation take place in such a device. Another test would be a spectroscopic one. And there are a couple of ones that I've thought about that I think would work. One involves looking at a transition, an outer shell transition of xenon-1, which is a noble gas. The ordinary transition between the outermost excited state and the unexcited orbital is known to take place at 1469.6123 angstroms. That's a well-known spectroscopic data point. What I'm suggesting is we took xenon-1 and put it inside a Casimir cavity. Both these orbitals would be influenced, would be modified to some extent. It's unlikely they'd be modified in exactly the same way. And so there's probably some differential between these two orbits. And so we would expect to measure a spectroscopic line at 1469.6123 plus or minus delta angstroms. So unless we happen to be extremely unlucky and have the effect, have the zero-point field effect occur exactly the same for both these orbitals, there should be some differential here. And so this spectroscopy experiment would show whether in fact orbitals are influenced by the zero-point field the way we hope. The problem with this is that you'd have to do it in vacuum because this radiation is at 1400 angstroms. You can't do it in air, you have to do it in vacuum. That's difficult then because you have to put all your instrumentation into a vacuum chamber and so on. There's a simpler way to do it.
So they're saying, how do we test this? And we say, okay, well, we can do this test here, and because we know the orbital distance of these electrons in terms of when they're at a point where they're easier to break free than when they're more connected to the nucleus, then we can figure out if there's, if this hypothesis checks out. The problem is, how the hell do you measure this? They're saying, okay, well, we can do it, but we got to be in outer space. We got to be in 0 Gs to be able to figure this out. Okay, well, now you've already added a lot of things to figure this out.
Do it with hydrogen because you can do the same trick. In this case, we're looking at the Balmer lines of hydrogen. The transitions from the n equals 3 to n equals 2 state, 65, 63 angstroms, one of the most well-known lines in all spectroscopy or astrophysics. And again, we would expect to have a differential effect between these two orbitals so that the Balmer line would be shifted to 65, 63 plus or minus some delta A in angstroms. Now, this is simpler because you don't have to do this in vacuum. You can do this in air. The difficulty is that hydrogen is not monatomic. It naturally comes as a molecule. So you have to dissociate the hydrogen and at the same time excite the hydrogen molecules and then look at the cascade, the recombination spectrum, to see whether such a shift takes place. So this is a second spectroscopic test that doesn't suffer from the vacuum chamber requirement, but then suffers from the fact you have to dissociate the hydrogen molecules and excite the resulting atoms into the state where you have then a recombination that at the end will give you a Balmer spectrum line that is shifted because of the effects of the Casimir plates. So the way to do this and a lot.
Okay, so basically said here's another way we can measure it. It should be easier using hydrogen. So now he's going to show, I think, how you would actually set the device up with these Casimir cavities so that you could actually pull it off.
Large scale would be to build, for example, plates that have metallic strips put on them so that the atoms would flow through Casimir cavities. You see that here's a Casimir cavity. And I've just cut the top plate off so you can see the inside of this thing. So the gas flow would go this way, crossing Casimir cavities, in and out, in and out, in and out of Casimir cavities. And a device like this can accommodate 1 million or more Casimir cavities. It's very simple to build such a device. Another one might be like this, a stack of conductor and non-conducting layer plates with Casimir tunnels on the order of a tenth to 1 micron in diameter. And again, the atoms would simply flow through, in this case, a tunnel that consists of many, many thousands of Casimir cavities. Each time it passes into and out of a Casimir cavity, we would hope to pick up some energy. And another way that, in fact, if Larry Lemke's in the room, I'll thank him for this. Another way to do that is to have a rotating device that looks very much like a CD, a stack of CDs, and the rotation of this will naturally pull gas through it, and as the gas then flows down the center and out through along the discs of course have Casimir cavities etched on them, you again get the same kind of effect. So there are various ways to do this, and we're hoping that this will be a new energy source. If we're correct, this is a game changer. I mean, it would be a free energy source. It would change things dramatically. On the other hand, we've yet to demonstrate that the effect actually occurs. We have these good theoretical reasons to think it does, but theoretical reasons are one thing and experimentation is something else.
So a few weeks back, we watched Garrett Model, maybe it was a month or two back, probably longer actually. And they've done this now. So this was 14 years ago. And the results did look anomalous, as in like it looked like they were getting energy out of nowhere from it. So this is pretty interesting, but you also notice that like we're talking about very small scales here, how we're building this. So like we're talking like microchip type stuff.
We hope to fabricate a prototype. Garrett's been working on this. We did have some funding for a time from DARPA, and the results from that were inconclusive. There was also some private funding. And the experiment is still going on at a very low level here at the university. We need another several $1 million to do this right, to do this properly. And the design is based on microchip technology, which Garrett tells me and told all of us last night is pretty easy to do and pretty cheap to do. So the cost of building one of these things, if it works like this, would be very, very low. And we're hoping that this demonstration can be built here at the university and show the effect, and that this then becomes a game-changing result that emerges from within the SSE, let's put it that way. And I think I'm done.
Let's see if he gets any questions.
Do we have time for just a few questions?
Bernie, you didn't say anything about the material. Is that the Casimir plates? Can it be metallic or?
Yeah, it's got to be metallic. It's got to be conducting.
They have to be conducting.
They have to be conducting. They have to be conducting at the right wavelength too. Because if you go far enough in the ultraviolet, materials lose their conductivity. So that is another issue. We're sort of in a narrow range where the cavity has to be a certain size, and yet if we go down to that size, we may be stretching the conductivity properties of the boundaries of the plates. So it gets a bit finicky and a bit tricky. But Garrett will solve all that.
Now I see. I'm not going to say, but there's a specific thing related to what he just said there in terms of Garrett Model's most recent version and patent. You'd have to go back to the previous stream to see it. So he's saying you have your material with the cavities needs to be conductive. Okay, needs to be conductive like a metal. We've talked a lot about superconductivity, for example. So you imagine like, okay, what if it's perfectly conductive? Now think about what we just discussed here in terms of what's the conceptual basis for it. We have a conductive area, we have a gap, just space, and then we have another conductive area. It has to be small. It has to be small because the Casimir force is also, even though it's macroscopic, it's still very small as well. So they need to be very, very close together, but not necessarily too close together at the same time. So there is some tricks to this. So you think, okay, well, does it have to be that design? Can we do different designs related to it? And that's where I think the Garrett Model stuff gets really interesting, the recent stuff he's been working on.
Over here. Does it, the effect gets stronger as you get smaller dimensions, right? So is there a point at which you could make this a smaller scale device and get more energy, or is there sort of a trade-off?
It does, yeah. If the theory is correct, then the electron, when it loses sort of the support of the radiation at one wavelength, it drops down into a lower orbit. And that then is stabilized by the higher energies of the zero-point field. So the further it drops, the more energy comes out in principle, yes.
So there you go. I mean, the smaller you get, the more energy you're getting out of it. So you actually do want to make it as small as you can actually get it. And this is part of the reason why we've been limited, because now you have a requirement of our material science. We got to figure out how can we engineer this maybe almost to the atomic level. So like at this point, we're literally producing metamaterials. Metamaterial to me is kind of a catch-all phrase where it's like you're just engineering it to such a specific level that you can actually change the properties.
Yeah, that's right, yes.
You and last night you talked about the size and how much energy you're going to get.
Yes.
It doesn't clear to me you know how much of that energy you're going to be able to capture.
Yeah,
and how can you make these estimations without knowing that?
It's a swag. I was assuming that we had perhaps 1 electron volt per transition of an atom through the cavity. In the case of hydrogen, the ionization is 13.6 electron volts. And so I'm assuming we have something like a few percent of the energy of the ionization, a few percent of the effective ionization energy from a given level. But it is a swag. It's a guess.
Okay, it's clear that this talk has generated lots of questions, which we won't have time for at this time.
Okay. So that was a very interesting video. If you guys are not up to speed on 0-point energy, there you go. Why is that important related to conscious plasma? Because if you go back to the beginning, we basically were talking about that maybe a permanent connection to the 0-point energy, to the ether, is what's required for consciousness to take hold. And I think that a lot of the people that have come up with this idea of conscious plasma, that's what they've determined as well. And maybe that's what we are doing all the time. Every living being is doing all the time. And maybe plasma is capable of doing it as well. Now, this doesn't mean that the orbs in the MH370 video are conscious. I'm not saying that they came in and they saved the plane or whatever. But if you want to believe that, go nuts. I think it's interesting that Salvatore Pais has mentioned plasma several times, but in his most recent statement, that Dave Rossi message, which as far as I know, he's still fine. I haven't talked to him today. He said, or Salvatore Pais said that, like, I believe in human technology. To me, that's a shout out saying that what we're looking at in the MH370 videos is humanly engineered. But if we figure out, like, hey, there's plasma can be conscious, and maybe UFOs, like the Foo Fighters, what have you, or some form of plasma creature being, AI that somebody made, who knows? Maybe we figure out how to do it ourselves. Like maybe we made our own version of it. Like, let's say, for example, that we make the Terminator in the future. Well, then the good guys make their own version of the Terminator to fight against the evil Terminator. That's certainly if I'm just making a story up, that seems plausible. So I think there's certainly, like, we shouldn't look at it in terms of, like, a lot of people try to argue with me about this idea of, like, oh, we've seen these going back 100 years, 1,000 years, ancient history has images of it. That means that what we're seeing must be aliens. No, not necessarily. Like, even if these were aliens or a previous civilization, breakaway civilization, ultra terrestrials living under the ocean, whatever, we still could have figured it out. And I'm not arguing with that. Like, I think that we need to follow the evidence wherever it goes. And even if that was true, it does not rule out, like, the orbs in the MH370 videos being our technology or whatever. The biggest thing I have with that is that when I watched the drone video, it's clear that we know what's going to happen, which is the strongest evidence for what we're looking at is our technology. Now, in fact, I want to show this right now as well. This is the satellite video. This is the biggest tell. I'm going to show in a second here. And the reason I want to show this is because we're going to look at some other stuff related to some plasma orbs in just a minute here. When the first orb comes flying in, it's coming in right here after he moves the screen around. This first orb comes flying in at supersonic, maybe not hypersonic, but supersonic speeds probably right here. It's going thousands of miles an hour. Notice that it does not immediately lock in. If this was a conscious being, I think that the orb would have immediately locked in. Instead, it slingshots way past it. And then it's already doing this weird orbital motion here. To me, this looks like artificial intelligence. This is where, like, I could imagine artificial intelligence struggling here, and it circles next to the plane right there. And then it locks in. And then right after that, the other ones lock in. That doesn't feel like self-aware to me. This feels like a weapon that's being, like, shot at the plane. And they're going, okay, it locks in. Now the other two show up. We're already recording this before these things show up as well, which tells me, like, we know what's going to go down here. So there you go. I wanted to show that. So I'm not ruling out whatever, all these other incidents happen, Foo Fighters stuff or whatever, but there definitely seems to be some level of control, but I would consider it like an AI level of control. Sorry, Lulu's like breathing real weird. Okay. Now I want to show you guys this video. Where is it? The one of this woman that I posted earlier. She's on TikTok, I think. We're gonna watch this video, and then we're gonna watch the follow-up to this video as well. And we're gonna watch a couple other floaty plasma orb videos. And I'm gonna sip on that scissor. Okay, so this is some TikTok woman. She actually, just for the record, if you are trying to slip into my DMs as a woman or whatever, like a smart woman that like understands science, you don't have to be like a PhD, but like just you think about bigger things than like who's it angry at who in the Real Housewives TV show. Like those kind of women are sexy to me. Here we go.
Okay, guys, I'm about to blow your mind. If you follow along on my page, you might not know that I am a huge science nerd. And I recently came across this study that was done about plasma. I'm not talking about bodily plasma. I'm talking about the fourth state of matter. We have solid, liquid, gas, and plasma. Plasma is just an ionized state of gas that has positively charged ions, negatively charged electrons. If you have no idea what I just said, think lightning, think stars. The sun is made of plasma. So anyways, recently they came across plasma bubbles hanging around over top of the pyramids of Giza, kind of like so.
So I didn't report on the plasma bubbles over the top of Giza because like I don't even know what to do with that or what it means or whatever. But it is kind of interesting when talking about plasma. Like maybe there are natural ball lightning phenomenon, but they're not gonna like a ball lightning isn't gonna be there for like a minute floating around a plane, for example. Like we're looking at something that's coherent, self-sustaining. That's the difference between nature versus like this is artificially created or intelligently created.
They did a deep dive case study on plasma. When I say they, I'm talking about them. And I'm going to break it down for you and tell you what they found. First off, can we note by saying that they are referring to them as plasmoids? Why would they refer to them as plasmoids? When I started reading it, I was like thinking the same thing. Why are we calling them plasmoids? They're calling them plasmoids because they're saying that they have intelligence and that they're conscious, intelligent, conscious beings, plasma. Right here, they say based on factual evidence that some plasmoids may be sentient and conscious of their surroundings and engage in purposeful interactions. Long story short, this is like an 80-page case study, and it basically says that they torment spacecraft and aircraft, specifically the ISS and astronauts, spacecraft in general. They will form around them. They'll buddy up with each other and mess with the astronauts at the windows. It's crazy. A little further down on this page, it says that they engage in complex behaviors and what could be construed as curiosity and evidence of intelligence. And like I just said, astronauts reported that glowing like plasma entities have appeared outside the shuttle windows, often traveling from window to window as if looking inside. They're being accused of surveillance, mimicry, and toying with and harassing the aircrafts. Here's kind of some photos of that. Right here is the ISS and the little...
So she's going through the paper right now. I'm going to read the abstract right after this, and I read through some of it as well. I'm going to give you my opinion here, but these images she's showing actually do come from the scientific paper. I do think it's interesting when they look at it. It's not very high quality, in my opinion.
Little balls all around them are plasma. In this study, they're also saying that UFOs pretty much are plasmoids. Something else noteworthy is that they're saying that they may have incorporated all the necessary elements for the synthesis of RNA leading to DNA and thus life. Basically saying that DNA exists because plasma exists. If you've made it this far, you're probably like, what's your point? What are we getting at? Plasma's intelligent, so what? I want to talk about this. When you look at the electrical discharge formation of plasma in a laboratory, this is what it looks like. Everything else here is ancient cave drawings. Just take a moment and look at it. Just look. This is the point I'm getting at. What did they know that we don't currently know? These are drawings from all over the world. Look at these places. And they were all worshiping the same thing. Plasma. I don't know, it kind of makes me wonder. Energy cannot be created nor destroyed, so what happens to your soul when you die? Are we all just plasma? Let me know what you think. To me, this is like literally breaking news in science and honestly ancient history too. It changes a lot. And if any of my mom friends on TikTok actually like this kind of content, let me know and I'll do a part 2 because I could talk about this all day.
So I think that's interesting. At the end, though, it's pretty funny. Then she goes into the Real Housewives mode. She's like, "Oh, well, plasma sentient. What does this matter? Why does this matter?" I mean, it's like, what do you mean? I just told you that plasma can explain like RNA. Like maybe it can explain like the building blocks for life itself. Like that seems kind of important. So I looked at this paper myself. I'm gonna pull it up here. I think this is the one. This one. It's the one with fourth state of matter, I think, right? Yeah. And how to remove this? Add back. There you go. I thought it was kind of interesting, but the first thing I noticed is when you look at the people who are the scientists connected to it, it's like they picked one of everybody. We got an astrophysicist here, we got a zoologist here, we've got physicist over here, we got astronomer, kind of biology, some things related to biology here. So I don't know what's going on with like why they wrote this and how all these people got together with this. Does seem interesting. So they said that plasma is up to 1 kilometer in size and behaving similarly to multicellular organisms have been filmed on 10 separate NASA space shuttle missions. Over 200 miles above Earth within the thermosphere, these self-illuminated plasmas are attracted to and may feed upon electromagnetic radiation. They have different morphologies: cone, cloud, donut, spherical, cylindrical, and have been filmed flying towards and descending from the thermosphere into thunderstorms, congregating by the hundreds and interacting with satellites generating electromagnetic activity, approaching the space shuttles. Remember the Space Shuttle Columbia? Computerized analysis of flight path trajectories document these plasmas traveling at different velocities from different directions, and they change their angle of trajectory, making 45, 90, and even 180-degree shifts following each other, basically ignoring inertia. They've been filmed accelerating, slowing down, stopping, congregating, and engaging in hunter-predatory behavior, and intersecting plasmas leave plasma dust trail in their wake. Similar lifelike behaviors have been demonstrated by plasmas created experimentally, like the one we saw with the space shuttle or the space plasma. Plasmas may have been photographed in the early 1940s by World War II pilots, identified as Foo Fighters, repeatedly observed and filmed by astronauts and military pilots, and classified as unidentified aerial anomalous phenomenon, UAP. Plasmas are not biological, but may represent a form of pre-life that, via the incorporation of elements common in space, could result in the synthesis of RNA. Plasmas constitute a fourth state of matter and are attracted to electromagnetic energy, and when observed in the lower atmosphere, likely account for many UFO/UAP sightings over the centuries. So this is pretty interesting. Yeah, hey, baby, into plasmoids? Wait, where's that? Plasma gets me hard for real. So really what the main evidence was of this scientific paper was a bunch of videos that come from NASA where they think they're seeing floating balls of light. Somebody asked me, why are they illuminated? Because when you look into the Schwinger effect and the Schwinger limit, photons get released from the 0-point energy, from the ocean. When we pull out of there, we get light. We get electromagnetic energy. So if these are coherent balls of energy that are constantly extracting energy, they're emitting light all the time as they pull that energy out of the ether. And they keep this coherence, which is this self-organizing structure to them. Now, maybe we have to induce that or regulate that with like a magnetic field or something, like if we're producing it. But the idea here is that we've seen them potentially naturally. Maybe they can explain UFO sightings. Now, to me, I'm going to push the limit here and say that I don't think even in the 1940s, this necessarily means it's aliens, even in the 1940s. I do think there's a world where like the Nazis figured it out with their early experiments, and they figured out that they could create self-coherent balls of plasma. It still seems like that's pretty advanced, but still possible. So what am I going to do here? Let me see. I didn't take any notes on the exact parts that I wanted to mention here. Oh, being attracted to electromagnetic activity. That was the other thing that I wanted to discuss, because a lot of sightings have been linked to weather or like volcanic activity or like Fukushima as well. One aspect of this is that they're attracted to this electromagnetic energy that's out there. And because they themselves are coherent balls of energy, it's just like moths to a flame. The other thing is that they might be able to shapeshift a little bit, because you're in a situation where this thing's not perfectly like spherical, or it's not perfectly circular at all. And if there is some kind of life to it, if it can think, then can it create little balls of itself? There's a lot of UFO videos out there where some kind of ball of mass like drops stuff from it or stuff separates from it. And when you look at it in infrared, you can't really tell what's going on or why that's happening. So just throwing that out there as some of these connections that seem to exist between this paper about plasma and then videos that are out there. So we already watched the video, the satellite video. Now, when we look at the drone video here as well, and then I'm going to show you guys a video from that scientific paper actually as well. The other part to me that really sticks out is this being human made, is when you get to the close up of the orbs. This heat signature we see of the orbs is too perfect. It's always this vortex, like weird, like wedge of the orb. When we see it in a super close up, we only see the super detail right here in this close up, where you can see there's this wedge formation. See this clear wedge on the orb. This heat signature to me screams mechanically engineered. There's no like difference between the different orbs. They're like perfectly identical in terms of how they're functioning. Which if I would think if it was something in nature that was random, I wouldn't expect them all to be perfectly exactly the same. I'd expect there to be some size difference or some, difference between them. But you look at that and you see that heat signature, and that just tells me the other part too is that how are they moving? Like if it was something that was natural, I would expect it to just move randomly. It can move wherever. Like I wouldn't expect to see this directional. Maybe I need to show the other one. This dark line in front of the orbs, basically. The dark line in front of the orbs in this clip right here. You can see this dark line is actually in front of the orbs before its direction of travel. This has got to be something mechanical inside, in my opinion. If this was like a life form that's just choosing to do this perfect spiral formation with two of its buddies, I don't think we'd see that. That to me looks like a laser or something mechanical that was in this to direct the orbs around. Now, could that be produced remotely? Yeah, that's possible. But if it's being produced remotely as well, like radars are like dictating the path of this object, then in that situation too, it's still not going to be conscious because it doesn't have self-mobility. You need to be able to move around if you're conscious. So those are my arguments for you guys. You don't have to appreciate them or even agree. It's fine. I don't demand ideological purity. Now, this is the video that came along with that. What? Video codec doesn't support? Okay, hold on. I'm not going to have sound for this. Was it this one? I'll show it this way. I don't know why that didn't show up. So you guys aren't going to have sound for this, but you can see the video evidence. It's probably better without the sound because it's all dramatic and stupid anyway. You'll be able to see the video evidence of what they talked about in that scientific paper. So this is actually the real evidence. You can see this is the guy's name, thermosphere, fourth domain of life or whatever. These are some of the videos they're talking about. We're not going to watch all this. It's like 17 minutes long. But we'll watch a little bit of it here. I'm just going to let this play. I'm going to commentate over the top. So that looks like 3 orbs right there. Some of this stuff's too grainy. I can't tell what we're looking at here. So a lot of people are like, oh, show me something convincing. And then you show them like the best footage ever. And they're like, that's just CGI. I can make that. That's easy. That's not even good work. Blah, blah, blah. It's like, man, there's no pleasing some people. Like if this is what you're giving me as your video evidence, even I'm like, yeah, that's not super convincing, man. But if like I have inside information about how this video was taken and I know that like that was taken in outer space and there's nothing else out there, then yeah, I might be more convinced by it. Some of these as well are microscopic. They show microscopic comparisons to show how things on the very small scale seem to look similar to how we see these things flying around in outer space. Oh yeah, that one's a famous one right there. So that one that they just showed, I'm going to go back to that one. Really? So this one that's about to come up here in a second, this one is shown a lot on UFO circles. I've seen it before where the object, there's some kind of flash, like this one right here. You're going to see this flash and then you're going to see this thing change direction. This is actually in outer space that we're looking at. We're looking at the Earth here. This one's actually one of the more impressive ones I've seen. So you're going to see this flash go off, and then you're going to see this object just shoot away. Watch this object. Boom. Look at that movement. I mean, that's a complete trajectory change. So it does make me wonder, like, if there were just floating balls of light and energy that were out there, you know, would we be capturing them? We must be capturing them on video. We must be. It turns out there's a lot of situations with like the ISS where stuff gets live streamed and people are like, whoa, what was that just went floating by? That was like, or like that, you know? Like, what is this stuff? We're seeing this stuff in outer space. Like, is this just sky ice, space bugs? Like, what is this stuff? So these people found, I don't know how many examples, 10 or more different examples from like footage in outer space where they're like, this, we can't explain this. Like, now to me, this is evidence that, again, like if you're a debunker, you're a skeptic, you're never going to believe this. You're just going to come up with some explanation, you know? It's a bug really close to the camera. It's like, dude, we're in outer space. I don't know. Truthfully, I don't know. What I will tell you is that this evidence to me is not nearly as compelling as MH370 videos. MH370 videos compared to this, it's like, no, you're looking at it like super close up. You're seeing exact heat signatures in there that let you deduce exactly how this is working. It's Galactic Federation. You won't believe it. In the future, you'll know. You know what? I'm happy to have that be the case. If they come here, hopefully they get rid of Kamala Harris, and then we can have, you know, reduce the inflation on our goods. I'm just kidding, chat. Don't get angry. Don't get angry. But, you know, a lot of people do say, like, even if this is real, like, well, so what? How does this change my day to day? It doesn't, right? It doesn't. And this is the part where like the UFO community really is just kind of disconnected from like the common man. The common people are like out here just trying to like get by day to day on like, you know, they're living paycheck to paycheck. And this is why the lady in her chair or in her the lady sitting there on her bed or whatever she was doing, she's like, great, plasma's conscious. So what? Right? Are you giving me a raise? Like, how does this change my day-to-day life? Okay, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit here because we already saw that one. So, I mean, there's nothing. What was that? I just floated by. Thing illuminated. Or like the weird underwater one I showed. Like the other thing about this plasma is that this stuff is going to be able to float through water and air and space. And I think the thing that people aren't realizing is that like the Navy is seeing a bunch of shit in the water. And since the water is so excluded, there's secluded, there's nobody around there. Like people aren't seeing it. They're not capturing it on video. And they're saying like, we're seeing a bunch of stuff underwater and hearing stuff. Because remember their acoustic system. Look at this. This one looks like 3 orbs. You see that? There's also like a lot of videos, guys, that seeing 3 orbs and 3 balls of light has become really common. In fact, we've been seeing it. Lou Elizondo claims to have seen it in some kind of footage that nobody in the world has seen except for people in the classified world. It does make you wonder if some of the stuff related to like the triangles or whatever, the, you know, black triangles and some of that stuff is like connected to this. Now, also, when you think about the connection to the ether, so imagine that these plasma balls have a permanent connection. So like the Casimir cavity, when we were looking at 0-point energy, imagine that these coherent balls of energy, they're using a different engineering answer. Instead of plates together or a spring or even Casimir cavities, we just use a different state of matter entirely. And this plasma state of matter allows us to manipulate the squeeze and the pushing apart. And if we can do that just through like oscillation, through some kind of vibration, where now we have this vibration in play, and the vibration itself automatically causes the spring to squeeze and unsqueeze. Now we've created a situation where we can extract unlimited energy from it. So this is the part where like I see the connection between these Casimir designs, Casimir cavities, etc., to how plasma might be the answer. Don't use a solid plate. Plasma is It's kind of a liquid. It's a gas. Like it's just its own form. And so it seems like a long time ago, decades ago, the military, the private military contractors, with the defense contractors, whatever, they figured this out. They figured this out. Maybe they saw it in the sky. Who knows? But we're seeing a lot more of it recently. Like recently, we've been seeing these orbs and stuff like this way more and better quality than this. So I'm going to switch over and let's show some of those videos. So first, I'm going to show the one that, let's do the one that I showed the other day. I'm going to get rid of the sound because it's super loud and annoying. But so this one, so this was, now we've got high definition cameras. So people are walking on high definition cameras and we're catching this. And just for the record, I'm not claiming to stand by any of this footage. I'm just pointing out there's a lot of videos where we're seeing orbs flying around triangle formations. These are not just drones with like bright lights on top of them. If you think it's a drone with a bright light on top of it, like, sorry, man, you gotta wake up a little bit. It's not what we're looking at here. There's something else going on here. Now, does it have to be aliens? No. But we need a little bit. We need to be a little bit more scientific than, well, just some kind of drone with a bright light. Like, record. Who's running this? Like, look at the altitude on this thing. And the other part too is like, what does a drone even mean anymore? What does drone even mean? Drone is really just an autonomous remote controlled vehicle. So technically, if this is a ball of plasma, it still can be a drone. Still can be a drone. So that's why I find some of those arguments pretty weird. Now, sure, okay, maybe that video is fake. I don't know. Maybe it is. I looked around online. I didn't see any debunks of it or whatever. I'd bring them up. If so, I wouldn't necessarily mean it's debunked, but I would address them. Now, this is another video. This video goes back 10 years. So this video, and I am going to play the sound on this one, is from 2013. Now, before you ask, I saw it. I don't know if it was 2013, but probably between 2013 and 2015, I saw this video many years ago. I remember seeing it thinking like, nah, I wasn't into orbs and balls of light and didn't really make any sense. Now, after I've just watched all this stuff about how plasma can like be self-coherent, might be alive, it might be the connection of free energy, and this might be related to cold fusion and low energy nuclear reactions. Now I look at this video and go, was this like a test flight? And people may say, like, would people be freaking out if you saw this 10 years ago? Probably not. I'd just be like, what am I looking at here? Is this some kind of drone show or what is this? And then you start to see it move away and then you kind of freak out. So I don't actually find there to be anything weird about the fact that people just ignored this. Other people may have seen this too, but you got to realize, like, people on airplanes are like more than half the people have the window closed. Nobody's paying any attention to what's going on outside. And if you look at this, you're not really going to freak out, I don't think. It's not like looking at like an alien or predator in like one of the movies. Like, you're like, oh, there's a weird ball of light out there. Like, I don't know. What's that? I love her response at the end. So the movements here, you can tell this is really close to the plane. Why? Because you can actually see the squeezing of the triangle as it's moving around. So this is actually probably in a perfect equilateral triangle. It's just the perception of it is what's changing it. So it makes it look like it's bigger. The size is changing. That's pretty damn weird, especially for 2013. This has got to be one of the earliest, most high quality footages that I've ever seen of orbs in a triangle formation. before this that, yes, there might be stuff that's out there, but not filmed in what looks to be like pretty good camera. You know, camera phones started getting pretty good in 2013. Also, you can see there's actually dirt on the windows here. So this is what a real window looks like. Like Jonas DeRoe claims that he took cloud images out of a plane in 2012, and there's nothing on the windows at all, like not one speck of dirt. Every single window I've ever been on an airplane, it's got some shit going on, either these bubbles you see over here or scratches or just dirt or whatever, right, on the window. So at least we do see that, which tells us, okay, and I don't know, like, you know, could this be fake? Maybe. Anything can be fake. Just balls of light. This is why it's so important that we have the MH370 videos. This is why the MH370 videos are not in optical vision. Because if they were looking in optical, all you're going to see is a ball of light. You can't tell like anything what's going on with just a ball of light. But instead, we're looking at it in a thermal vision. And in thermal vision, we can see a lot more detail about it. Okay, that part right there, when this orb breaks off, that would freak me out. If I was on the plane, I mean, honestly, at this point, if I see this on my plane, I'm just going to tell stewardess, we are going to all be warped away in a few minutes. So can you get the passengers ready? And then I would probably just start saying my prayers as I crap my pants. That would probably be what happened if this happens to me when I go fly next week. I mean, look at that movement. That just looks, it looks unnatural, but it also looks like, you know, intelligently controlled. Like the orbs spinning around, I would just wonder, am I seeing shit? Right? Moment that one on the left goes down there, yeah, that okay. And then these other two seem like, the weird thing about this, now this is a stretch. This is a stretch for sure. But that first orb goes away. And then the other two orbs like almost track it. Like look at these orbs. They almost like stay in formation and they both move at the same time right there at the end. Do you see that? When I watched this again before I posted it like yesterday, I thought to myself, that really, really reminds me of the MH370 video. Man, imagine these MH370 videos are real and these get admitted to be real. People are going to be looking back at footage like that airliner footage and they're going to be going, shit, was that real? Because you see this first orb come flying in and it's almost the same like movements, like where the first orb is leading the other orbs. First orb comes flying in, doesn't quite lock in. The second and third orbs don't show up right away. It locks in after the first rotation, and then the second orb comes flying in, and it gets in rotation, and then the third orb comes flying in like one more second after this, and it's going to get into orientation immediately. Here's the third orb, and it's already in orientation, and it's moving. I don't know. I look at that, and I compare that to the end of this video. It looks like the other two are just moving at the same time together. Very weird. So I want to hear your guys' thoughts. I'm going to pull up a couple other videos we're going to watch here as well, and then we're going to call it a night. But I want to hear your guys' thoughts on what you think about the plasma. Do you think that it could be conscious? Do you think that they're demons, angels, jinn? I've heard a lot of stuff that's out there. They do seem to have these self-organizing properties. I think, you know, if these are historical, you know, could these be, could there be a biblical aspect to this? You know, do you think, are you into the ancient history kind of stuff? Because it's kind of hard to not see some of those connections, even if I don't necessarily believe that that's the answer. Same tech. I'm going to pull up another video. Demons exist, huh? Imagine some of them are some color and then the other ones are a different color. That'd be wild. Where's the follow-up? Okay, so she did a follow-up. That lady we watched earlier, she does a follow-up. She doesn't look as hot in this one. I think her ears are just too big, if I'm being judgmental and very shallow. Let me see. Here it is. But let's listen to her anyway. I'm still going to listen to her because I'm not a misogynist. Respect women. Respect women, chat. Believe all women, chat. Now let's take a look.
You guys wanted a part 2, so here's a part 2. And quick thank you
And remember, guys, believe all women. So whatever she's saying must be true automatically. Here we go.
To everybody for indulging in my nerdiness with me. I am just a stay-at-home mom TikToker, so this is way outside of my normal content. But like I said, I could talk about this all day, every day. I'm a former science teacher, science nerd, STEM girly, so I got science facts out the ass for y'all. But I am not an expert on plasma. A lot of you guys were tagging a girl named Dana Kipple in the comments, and I looked at her page, and she knows way more about plasma than me, so I'm going to tag her below and check out her page if you want to learn more than you can probably learn from me. We're going to pick up where we left off on this page. Quick little recap. Plasma is intelligent. Plasma is conscious. This is the electrical discharge formation of plasma.
Quick recap, chat. Plasma's intelligent. Plasma's conscious. There you go, chat. Just quick recap. This is like, I think this is the level I have to keep it when it comes to like TikTok and Instagram. Guys, okay, let's just get up to speed. United States government stole MH370. They used some plasma orbs. Plasma might just be conscious. Plasma might just, be able to teleport planes away. So, you know what? Enjoy your next flight.
In a laboratory, and these are cave drawings all over the world. Some of you guys were saying you were a little bit lost at this part, questioning why would plasma make themselves visibly known to ancient civilizations but not us, and this lovely man has an answer for us. This is Anthony Peratt. He is an American physicist and author, and he's most known for his plasma physics knowledge. He's also found over 25,000 rock art images, and he has plenty of papers on that. According to Peratt, the relationship between the plasma formation and the rock art drawings are not accidental, they're not coincidental. Long story short, he essentially says that the terrestrial sky was lit up with electrical activity, essentially just making that shape, the squatter man, as he calls it, more visible to the human eye. He also wrote a book called Physics of the Plasma Universe, which you can find online if you want to search hard enough for it. One of the things that he talks about is the temperature versus electron density of plasma and its location. The reason I'm mentioning this and the reason that I think it's important is because
Okay, that might have been the most important part, and she like skipped over that in like 2 seconds. The density and the electron distribution. Of course, that's important. We just watched this whole thing by Bernard Haish, where he's talking about we're just trying to make a different distribution of the electrons, or like, we want to create an asymmetry. We want to force this electron orbital to change. And if we can force this thing to change naturally without any outside interaction and bounce back and forth, then we can get unlimited energy out of it. So that part was really important. Let's go back to that.
Because plasma is primarily located in the thermal. Mentioning this and the is which is my universe, which you can find online if you want to search hard enough for it. One of the things that he talks about is the temperature versus electron density.
What is wrong with this video?
And its location. Reason versus electron density of plasma is the hard enough for it. One of the things that he talks about is the temperature versus electron.
So her video is just broken. I don't know what's going on. What the fuck? What is this?
Density of plasma and its location. The reason I'm mentioning this and the reason that I think it's important is because plasma is primarily located in the thermosphere and exosphere of our atmospheric layers. The northern lights are plasma, so that checks out. So basically, he just theorizes that these layers were auroras.
Wait, the northern lights are plasma? Well, there we go.
On crack, which to me would be the most scientifically logical reasoning that these ancient civilizations were seeing the squatter man. Also, I forgot to put this in, but this is kind of relevant as well. Here are some more 3D versions of the squatter man, essentially, and more petroglyphs from
the squatter man. That sounds like a horror movie, guys. The squatter man's coming for you. Are we gonna make a horror movie about the squatter man? Some ball of plasma that just moves around, hovers around, chases you around. The squatter man. Notice in the bottom left here, this looks like Bob Greenyear's like I-Man or whatever, when you're seeing these, I don't know, teleportation, weird kind of alchemy effects, whatever you want to call them with the plasmas. Looks familiar.
Again, all over the world. Now, I know I said in the last video, it kind of made me wonder, what if we're all just plasma? What if our souls are plasma? What are our souls made of? I personally am not religious. I'm a science girly. I don't really know what I believe. But Robert Temple has a book called A New Science of Heaven, and he is pretty damn convincing. This is also a book that you can find online if you want to dig for it. In one of his chapters, he talks about the death flash and the life flash, and he has a quote from a researcher that I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name because I know I'll butcher it, basically saying that all living organisms emit low intensity light at the time of death. That radiation is 10 to 10,000 times stronger than emitted under normal conditions, which to me sounds like it's probably plasma, because what else could possibly emit that intense amount of radiation? Now, obviously, given all of this information, we cannot prove that we are plasma. But circling back to the study that I was talking about in the last video and confirming that plasma is conscious and intelligent, it really does make me wonder, There's a reason that we feel uneasy when we see those little orbs flying around. There's a reason that the sun is literally here.
Sorry, what did she just say? She a fan? Guys, this is one of my followers. There's a reason why we feel uneasy when we see those orbs flying around. I don't know. What is she referencing there?
Healing to our bodies. Lightning storms, solar flares, everything. It gives us energy. I'd love to hear what you guys think because I really don't know. This will probably be my last part on plasma itself, mainly because everything past the fact that they confirmed that plasma was pretty much UFOs is just theoreticals. And to me, I need concrete evidence. I just do. But
Okay, well, that was fun. So, and then I think I have one other video to share as well. So, plasma apparently maybe can explain souls. Maybe the soul can, go back to the ether or whatever. So, honestly, again, this all kind of comes back to this idea of maybe we just come from this sea of energy. Maybe that's where consciousness comes from. The universe might be live. The universe might be conscious itself. What if we can harness that? What if we can engineer that? What if we can make our own little artificial life forms based out of plasma? That's pretty weird. I think that the person who wins the most from this, if this is true, if it turns out we can make these conscious balls of plasma, we can even engineer them, like we're making virtual life. Chris Bledsoe's stock would be rising big time. This guy's been summoning orbs for a long time. Heck, even Patrick Q. Jackson's stock goes up a little bit. Who knows? Maybe someone told Patrick Q. Jackson it's a AI defense network and it's just really ours. We created it and we've got these orbs floating around. Patrick Q. Jackson's right. Well, then it's double scissor that night. Double scissor. Just joking, guys. Okay, the other one I wanted to show. Somebody in one of my replies, I think it was on this post. I'll show you guys so you can see. I think somebody said something about, and I'm trying not to be a dickhead in my replies. I'm doing my best, chat. I really, really, really am. Okay, so give me a break. Some people are just super annoying. Most of you are cool though. Most of you guys are cool. Somebody had something where they showed me that they had collected like a huge list of these, a huge list of sightings, and they had like a dozen. And some of them were pretty good. I was going to show a couple more because I wanted to show you guys, like, we got a shit ton. Here's one from Fukushima. This is the Fukushima one, chat. Notice this one. Look at all these. What is that? What is that? Are they doing a balloon show over Fukushima after it was melting down? What is this? Are these drones? It's a lot of drones. I mean, that is weird looking. Whoa, did it just combine at the end? I actually don't think I've ever seen this. Did this just combine at the end? Or is he just zooming out? It doesn't look like he's zooming out because the cloud doesn't change in size. This cloud stays the same right here. Let me see that one more time. He is maybe zooming out? No, I don't know. Ooh, that was weird, chat. Oh, sorry. Let me go. I pressed the wrong button. So that's one. Look, there's Patrick Q. Jackson. Everybody asked me about Patrick Q. Jackson. I mean, I think Patrick Q. Jackson's LARPing, but whatever. And then there's actually a recent one as well. There's been a couple of the recent sightings by pilots here have also talked about seeing luminous objects, but I don't think they've pointed out them moving in a triangle formation, though this kind of looks like a triangle formation. Hard to say. And here's one of the Foo Fighters. There's also Stan Deo. I wonder if I have the video of Stan Deo. Let me see. Somewhere, I don't think I downloaded it. I found a video of Stan Deo talking about these things being in orientation. We'll probably try to look at that later. That might be a separate live stream that we do, where he was claiming to be some kind of whistleblower, and he's saying these balls of energy will form these triangles, and then you can add like 3 more or like however many 4 more after that, whatever the numbers add up to. And then they'll always be in these coherent shapes that look like triangles or whatever they need to form. It's pretty bizarre because it seems to be a lot of connections to this idea of these balls of energy we're seeing in triangle formation. Supposedly, these are some more. I can't validate the authenticity of these. Where's the guy? Man, you guys, a lot of people replied here. Oh, thank you very much. Transducence L. Have you seen the orb UAP footage from China recently? Some clips look like they had close to 100 orbs at once. I posted in Discord if you're curious. Oh, did you just post it just now? Oh, this one's you. Okay, let's look at this one. I'll download it here. Okay, so this is the one that since L donated, we'll go ahead and make sure we address what you wanted us to look at here. This is supposedly from China. Eli? Is that what it is? I don't know if that's right. Maybe. But I think he was talking about the situation with China was that the airport was shut down for several days. Maybe that is one of the ones that they claim people saw. Not sure. Okay. Let's go. Let me see if I can find. I'm gonna give one more go here to see if I can find the person who had all the links. Maybe it was in. You know what? It was in the previous post. That's why. So it's in the quoted post here. Somewhere in the replies here, somebody said that they had found a bunch of videos like this, which I thought was pretty cool. Oh, also let's look at this one real quick. Wait, why are you guys not seeing this? This one right here is the crop circle UFO one. We'll come back to that one. I don't think we're quite ready for orbs explaining crop circles yet. Oh, that's different Eli. So I don't know. Maybe that was someone else. I do want to see the China ones. But anyway, in general, the point here, right, is that we should be on the lookout for more triangle illuminated orbs. It seems to be a trend that's going on. Ah, man, somebody had so many to look at. And also, guys, like I know there's a lot of people. You guys have no idea how many people send me requests for me to look at their videos. I'm not in the business of checking out people's random videos. If you got a sighting, that's awesome. Pull this one up, but I'm not some expert on orbs just because that Mage 370 video stuff. And you send me a thing with some lights in the sky. There's nothing I can make out of it. I can see what you guys can see. And I know a lot of people have experiences and what have you. Those are very personal and they mean a lot to people. So that's why I don't really want to diminish your experience. You know, if you have an experience, you have an experience. End of the day, we're all looking for answers as to what's going on in the sky. Huh. I don't know where that person was. Oh, you know what? I probably bookmarked it. Give me a sec. See if I can. That's probably what happened. I probably just bookmarked it. So what happens when I'm not prepared, chat? Feel bad. Oh, no, I didn't bookmark it. Okay, well, unfortunately, I can't find it right now. Actually, I'll give it one more go here. Could have sworn it was in this post that somebody replied and said that they had seen this. And they just recently did a whole research thing on it. Maybe it wasn't in this one. But also people are trying to connect this to crop circles because crop circles, a lot of times you see these weird patterns. So people are saying that, you know, this gets into the geometry of it, et cetera, et cetera. And this is one of the posts where people talk about like, well, we don't have this type of technology. Everything still has wings, is clunky as hell. Like this is where like I think the public is so disconnected with where the black projects are. Like we've had the ability to use electrostatic forces for lift for 60 years already. So we really need to not be closed-minded in terms of what type of technology we might have been able to develop. I think Salvatore Pais' patents really show that black projects are way ahead of where the public's at right now. Yeah, sorry, I can't find those links. It sucks, man. If anyone can find it, I thought that was the post about it. Maybe it was a different one. But somebody showed me a link to a bunch of other videos that they had out there that were similar kind of stuff. Either orbs that were separating, orbs in a triangle formation. And there's a lot out there. So even if one or two of those videos, or whatever, are fake, like I doubt they're all fake. I really do. It only takes one to be true, and then we can start to, extrapolate and try to use that as a data point. And yeah, so I think we'll probably end there. And with Ben Rich explaining Star Trek and the Black Projects, that we have stuff in Black Projects that is classified to a level. There's no mechanism to get it revealed to the public. And then there's also the issue of let me take a look at this. That people are going to go to prison. People are going to go to prison if some of this stuff is real. And those people don't want to face any consequences. So this is the reason why, even if we could reveal it, they wouldn't, because then they have to explain to the public why we did horrible, horrible stuff and why no one's ever going to face any consequences. And they're going to be like, well, we did it for the good of the country. We did it for the good of the country. And we didn't want to disclose it because we thought it was demons or some weird shit. And it's like, dude, what are you talking about, man? We could have free energy and you just didn't want to tell us because you decided that you thought it was we weren't worthy of it or whatever. That was not what I wanted, but that's okay. So that's, I think, the biggest problem with it in general. And then when you look at what we need to understand, we don't have to understand that much to understand how this is possible. Space is not empty. When I say space is not empty, I'm saying we can extract energy from the quantum vacuum, just like we saw today in the beginning. That's why that part about zero-point energy was so important. Robert Ford, 1984, shows that we can extract energy from the vacuum. Space is not empty. Super important. There's enough energy, remember, in this coffee cup to boil all the Earth's oceans, just in a small energy like this, to boil all the Earth's oceans, which requires a huge, almost incomprehensible amount of energy. So that's number two that we have to remember. There's energy out there. It's a huge amount. It's like an ocean of energy. And then the third one is all points in space and time are connected. This is probably the hardest one to comprehend. Because with all points in space and time being connected, then we have to understand this concept that distance is just an illusion. The point between here and here is an illusion. And we can actually, from Einstein's equations, solve it and figure out that there's a wormhole that connects these 2 points. All points are technically connected. We just don't see the connection, but there is a connection there. Like a really long invisible pipe. And if I twist the pipe on one end, the other end twists as well. That's entanglement. So let's listen to what Ben Rich told, what somebody asked when Ben Rich mentioned this.
Meyer from the School of Engineering inviting me to a lecture by Ben Rich.
Ben Rich was the director of Lockheed's Skunk Works for 16 years. He oversaw a number of USAPs that were secretly managed at the Skunk Works, including, most notably, the development of the F-117 stealth fighter.
So Ben Rich, 16 years. He saw secret projects that were made public. This guy worked in secret special access programs, SAPs. This is exactly the kind of person we want to hear their opinion on. So either you think that the guy we put in charge of some of the most secret spy planes ever was some kind of weird lunatic, or he was just telling the truth. Again, we should default towards people telling the truth. Trust, but verify. It's not that nobody lies, and it's not that people only tell lies. We should assume that people are telling the truth, and we should verify that information to see if they're lying or not.
Ben shared a slide set of about 40 slides of different things, starting with the U-2 spy plane, going all the way up to the stealth fighter at that time, mentioning that he couldn't talk about the other secret stuff. But when he ended his talk, he had a slide of a black disc zipping off into outer space. And he ended his talk with these words: "We now have the technology to take ET home."
Bro, if somebody from Lockheed Martin Skunk Works with 16 years experience comes up and goes, "We now have the technology to take ET home," the logical conclusion, he's saying that we can make either a warp drive or a wormhole or both. There's not a lot of ways. The reason why he's saying that is a very smart man. because the prevalent physics theory was that distance is too far. There's no way for us to approach the speed of light. It takes an increasing amount of energy the faster we try to go. So it's not even really comprehensible to get to Alpha Centauri. It would take hundreds of years. That's the closest star. So Ben Rich is saying we've solved that. We've solved that problem. We can now take ET home. Very specific wording. We've solved the problem of distance.
So you have to have vision, and you have to have the guts and the courage to go out past the steps and do something of any value. And we have to go past our grasp.
And we asked him questions about it. What did you mean when you said we have the technology to take ET home? Ben shared three major things that I think are worthy of research by researchers worldwide at this point in time. The first was we've somehow figured out how to do interstellar travel already. It's known. The
first one is obvious. We've somehow figured out interstellar travel. What is interstellar travel? According to Einstein's equations, it's warp drives and wormholes. And these are really it's just semantics. We're bending the space, the medium. Warp drive, think of it as like you have a throttle. You can change the gear on it. We can move slowly or we can move super fast. Wormhole, you could argue, is just a warp drive and you're turning it up to maximum. And once you break through this Schwinger limit that we have out there, now it's a wormhole. Now you're just instantly transmission from one location to the next.
Point he made was that there was an error in the equations. My suspicion is it's probably Maxwell's equations for electromagnetic theory. The third thing he said,
this guy was on point. He's like, there is an error in the equation. The bottom equation you see right there with the triangle times B equals 0, that one's wrong. It's actually equal to A. I believe that's the magnetic vector potential. Correct me if I'm wrong, chat. Delta times B equals 0. You change that to delta times B equals A. You bring back the scalar potential, the stress in the medium. Now you have a situation where we can manipulate gravity. And doesn't that seem obvious? We should be able to manipulate gravity. We can see that gravity is not constant everywhere we go. It depends on how much mass, energy. Mass is energy.
That was, how does ESP work? And I was really kind of startled because I didn't know what to say.
How does ESP work? How does ESP work? This guy, I don't know who this is, but he's obviously very intelligent. You say, how does ESP work? If you're assuming that extrasensory perception is possible, remote viewing is just an example, how is that possible? There's only one answer. There's only one logical answer. Only one logical answer. How is ESP? How are psychic powers possible?
But I blurted out, I don't know, all points in time and space are connected. And he looked me back in the eye and he said, that's how it works.
All points in space and time are connected. Super important to understand. What we perceive is a hologram. If you were really to boil it down to the framework of the hologram, we're just on a plate. We're on a plate. Why? That's literally how holography works. The plate in holography that produces the 3D hologram, every point on the plate has all of the information about the image. Every point has the whole image on it. So if you cut the plate in half, you still can see the whole image. What? How's that possible? It's an extra order, an extra dimensional effect that we're seeing. That's what we're seeing when we perceive reality as well. The holographic principle is the answer. All points in space and time are connected. That opens the door, guys. So I hope you guys enjoyed the live stream tonight. We talked about some of these orb sightings that we see out there, plasma, how plasma is connected to zero-point energy. We looked at zero-point energy and the origins of it. We showed how it's possible, not only just possible, but how it must exist. And then some conceptual idea on how to harvest it, Casimir cavities. We watched Bernard Haish explain it. He's also connected to Garrett Model. We've seen his updates related to it as well. And then we talked about how potentially this connection of free energy, where we're extracting energy all the time, that can lead to consciousness. And if you really want to get very esoteric with it, like, what are aliens? Are aliens just, do they even have to be humanoid? Can they be plasma? Can that explain jinn and alien or angels and demons and a lot of the mythology from, or at least the lore, let's say not mythology, but the lore from ancient civilizations and religious teachings. The reason why I love this is that we're thinking outside the box. A lot of people are stuck in this idea of little green men, which maybe, I don't know. I really, really don't know. But we should be thinking maybe it's going to be weirder than what we expect. So I hope you guys enjoyed this stream tonight, guys. We are going to talk about free energy on Friday. And on Friday, I think we're going to look at the Liberty engine, which is an open source free energy device, and some others. Because honestly, I don't know if we're the level where like random people like us can just have like plasma generators. Like it's just going to be too complicated to produce. I think only the big defense contractors and their private labs have that kind of equipment. But maybe we don't need that. Maybe magnets are enough. The asymmetry a magnet creates, maybe that can stir up the ether and we can produce energy from that. So we're going to look at free energy devices on Friday. We're going to evaluate them. We're going to look at a little science theory as well. So Free Energy Friday, guys, should be fun. I hope you guys are there. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night. I will talk to you guys again on Friday. Peace, MH370X. Let's see, which one are we going to go with? I'm going to go with the one we did last night.
Infrared eyes, scanning the black, tracking the heat, never turning back. Control 22, a covert gaze. Control 33, in the cosmic maze. Controls in the mix, secrets untold. Silent watchers, brave and bold. In the shadows, they silently glide, protecting our interest, far and wide. Spears, sentinel of the night, watching over with infrared sight, alerting us to threats afar, guiding our defenses like a guiding star. In the silence of space, they keep their post, shields unseen yet feared the most. With precision and speed, they warn of danger, keeping us safe from the missile's anger. As Beers, sentinel of the night, watching over with infrared sight, alerting us to threats afar, guiding our defenses like a guiding star. Controls in the mix, secrets untold, silent watchers, brave and bold. In the shadows, they silently glide, protecting our interest, far and wide. As Beers, sentinel of the night, watching over with infrared sight, alerting us to threats afar, guiding our defenses like a guiding star. As Beers, sentinel of the night, watching over with infrared